Hey gang, welcome back to Ozone Late Night. This is part 2 of my conversation with Brian Quarfoth, the owner and proprietor of Hat Hole Home Video. All right, everyone, welcome back to the second part of my conversation with Brian Quarfoth, the nostalgia curator and positivity connoisseur over at youtube.com/HatHoleHomeVideo. Brian, it's been a while since we've talked, so welcome back, because we have to simulate that a week has passed.
I've grown a big gray beard since we've been away.
Truly, they have finally solved the fusion process. We all now have clean energy, and the good vibes are emitting not only from our nuclear reactors, but from our hearts. All world problems have been solved, and the world is a paradise.
That's correct. It was not 10 seconds.
No, it was definitely not 10 seconds of me just marking something on a notepad file that there was a part 1 and a part 2, because that would be disingenuous and insulting to the intelligence of the audience.
Correct.
Let's talk about Star Trek Picard. Because I saw your Twitter post. Twitter might still exist by the time the show comes out. We'll see.
Well, yeah.
But
I mean, it might not be functioning today, but
it might not. Well, if the
but
dear
still
leader
there.
decides
It'll pop back up when it wants to work.
The domain will exist. We can say that with some confidence. What it will be is anybody's guess. It is a transforming thing at this point. But you had said you did not. Now, did you watch the first 2 seasons of Picard or not?
I watched season 1, and I couldn't bring myself to watch season 2. But I know what happened in season 2.
Yeah, I watched I think 2 episodes of season 2 and said, "Okay, I'm out," and that was it. And then I watched the thing at the end where Q dies, and that was it. Spoiler alert, I guess, but it's been out for a couple of years now or whatever. Yeah. So I really don't care. And honestly, neither do you.
That's true. I've watched the clips of kind of the big moments, so
which sadly are not bad, and just tells you that so much of the rest is bad.
Right.
I think that's the worst part about those clips is they simply highlight how much garbage the rest of it is. So now we come to season 3, and I had sworn off season 3, even when they announced all of Next Gen's coming back. I'm like, yep, that's a gimmick. I don't care. I'm not watching it.
Yeah, I'll say this: when they said we're bringing everybody back, I said, okay, I'm gonna watch. But I am going to watch with an understanding that this is not going to be for fun. This is an obligation. I have to watch it because I can't not know what they do with this cast.
Well, I didn't even care until RLM started reviewing them and didn't hate it, which I thought was... I really, when that happened, because they've hated just about all of New Trek, including Strange New Worlds, which baffles me, but I think I think they just want it to be like it was, and it's never going to be like it was, and I'm not, my mindset is not that way. I'm okay with enjoying new versions of things.
Right.
It's fine. So I like Strange New Worlds a lot. Discovery, the first season was good, I think, because there was nothing else. Second season I actually think is good, just legitimately good. And then it lost me after that. I went, okay, I'm starting to trail off, kind of where Doctor Who with David Tennant, who I like a lot, but I just got to a point with that where I'm like, I'm falling asleep. I shouldn't be falling asleep watching this. And that's where I got to with Discovery, and I kind of checked out. Strange New Worlds was great. I like that. And then...
Where do you fall on Lower Decks?
I think it's fun. I like it. I watched a little bit of the Prodigy one, too, and I mean, I know it's not aimed at my age bracket, but... I think that I almost feel like the people running things are paying less attention to what's not live action. Therefore, those people can do more interesting things.
Yeah,
because they're just like, well, it's animated. Yeah, that's my gut feeling on it. Is they're paying attention to the live action properties, and everything beyond that, they're kind of like, yeah, all right, just make sure that none of them has sex with an octopus and we'll be all right. Do whatever you want outside of that, and, space or otherwise. So I think that stuff's good. I like it. And then, so when RLM did not immediately vomit nuclear fire onto season 3, I went, okay, well, I've read other good reviews, which I don't necessarily trust, but they hate everything about Trek now. How are they saying that this is feeling like the old series? It seems impossible. So I went, all right, let me see. I'll watch the first 2 and I'll see if this is... Because that was honestly a whiplash thing for me, was their kind of lack of hatred of it.
Yeah.
So I watched it and I went, okay, I have to factor in that some of this, and I think I said this on our main show when I was talking about the first 6 episodes. I said, I know some of this is the contrast to the first 2 seasons, which were so bad that they appeared to be written by people who had never watched the original show.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So some of my enthusiasm, I know, is reactionary, vibration, bouncing off something so bad that going the opposite way inherently becomes good at the base. But I actually really do. I mean, you were absolutely right. It's too long. They should have wrapped this thing up in 4 episodes. No doubt about it. But it does, and I know it's the nostalgia pedal. I said in my review, they've stomped that pedal so hard they've made the whole show into a Flintstones car because they've gone through the floor of the car.
Yeah.
But
well, that's, and you know what?
It's working.
I'm not against nostalgia, obviously, but like Lower Decks is constant references, and that's kind of its thing. It's built on the idea that we're just gonna constantly reference, and that's gonna be a one of the fun aspects to the show. It's not the whole show. I think Lower Decks, as it's gone on, has a little more heart, and it has a little bit more going on than it started as literally it's like reference the show.
It's growing.
And
it's
growing into its own thing. So I don't mind constant references. This season of Picard is obviously, I mean, it's nonstop references. It's shocking how when they got to the Daystrom station, I couldn't believe how nonstop they were hitting us. I mean, there's the Fleet Museum, obviously, which is another kind of insulting thing. Not insulting, but it drives me crazy when it's like, so here's the Fleet Museum. These are apparently all of the ships that are notable enough to be in the Fleet Museum, and of course, it's all the ships from the shows. And there's going to be other ships mixed in there too, but just the idea that, like, okay, well, here's all the Enterprises, here's the Excelsior, here's the Defiant and the Voyager, and here's the Star Trek 4, and here's Enterprise, and here's it's that thing of like, and they're throwing in like the New Jersey, but that's obviously a reference to the original Enterprise. It's so packed full of like, well, like as if nothing else happened in the world of Star Trek except for what we saw. And that sort of hitting us with references drives me a little crazy. It's like, well, pad it out. Like, let me know that there's a world outside of the references that we know. But yeah, that's on the reference side. I'm not against it. I just think that they need to build a little bit more of a world past the references, past the things that we know.
Yeah, the Daystrom Institute was probably where it started to creak a little in terms of that. Did they show the Excelsior? Because that's my favorite ship. I didn't remember them showing that one.
It's in there.
Okay.
Yep.
They didn't highlight it though. I don't think they didn't. Talk about it.
No. It's in a wide shot. And I should say, I don't even know if we know it's an Excelsior class.
That's
ship.
okay. That's my favorite design. So I really don't care if it's not the Excelsior, as long as that ship's there.
It's a beautiful
ship. And I love the fact that the Titan seems to be half based on that, because that's an acknowledgement that, yes, it was the best ship design the Federation came up with. So let's just put that one to bed. But, and yeah, the thing with, I was 50-50 on the bounty being there, because they have to come up with this idea that, well, we couldn't find it in San Francisco Bay because the cloaking device had activated.
Yeah.
But since I love that bird of prey, I don't really care, because I think that's the best enemy ship they ever came up with. So
kind of like I agree with that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ship, and I love the fact that the wings come up when it's and go down depending on what it's doing. I like that. That's so cool, man. I love that ship.
That is. As much as, because I think, just talking Star Trek, the Romulans have always been, Next Gen's like my main Star Trek show. I watched everything, but Next Gen is like when I became a super fan, and it has always been like my main, my go-to. And the Romulans were always, I thought, the most interesting villains, because Klingons are so... I don't know. They're not. They get into the politics and the sort of the political backstabbing of Klingon culture, but really they're just big dumb brawlers. And they're
I was going to say, that there's only so far they can dip into their culture, because they've presented them as basically just warmongers,
right?
And that's everything's based on conflict, and there's only so far you can go with that. But
yes,
they do have
and it's all honor based, yet they are the most dishonorable. Like, they have the most dishonorable political system. It just doesn't make any sense if you start to pick it apart. But the Romulans I always thought were more interesting, because they're so cold and calculated, and
they are very political. Very
yes, they're extremely political, and they're so motivated by their self-interest. So you sort of always see where they're coming from. But you always think, like, God, could you just, could you just open yourself up to the Federation a little bit, and things would be so much... It was always like, we're enemies, but only because, we've always been enemies. It's like, they just needed to, pull that wall down. But they're so cruel. Like, they're so cold and calculated in what they're willing to do. They're so I just think they're always so interesting. So I've always loved the Romulan ships, but you can't argue with the Klingon bird of prey is just always going to be maybe it might be the greatest ship design in all of Star Trek. It might be in some way, just visually, better than even the Federation ships, even the Enterprise or the Excelsior. It's just such a cool design and so intimidating.
I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, because of all the ships I'm trying in my head to catalog everything now, because there's so many different ships and ship types.
Right.
But it is the one that immediately... One thing that I feel like they often get wrong in enemy ship design is, the Shrike is a good example. That ship is ridiculously evil. It's so over the top, Jimmy 90s. Yeah. I mean, I don't mind that they use the motion picture sound, because that is a great sound.
It's a great sound. I love it, but it is just every time it shows up, that's the that's the sound. It's like, yes. I am an evil ship.
Right, and that's where they tend to go. The Warbird, the Romulan Warbird, because the Romulans, I have no idea I've never actually seen what their creation story is, but they always felt like they were supposed to be just malevolent Vulcans. I mean, they are cousins to Vulcans, so it would make sense. It's like, well, what if the Vulcans weren't nice? Well, nice as they are. What if they incline towards a little bit evil or self-absorbed? Well, that's your Romulans, and that's what makes them interesting, is the Romulans are kind of the counterpoint to the Vulcans.
Yeah.
But their ships, the ships sort of make sense for their culture. They don't necessarily need to go over the top in making them look scary, but they do look intimidating. Whereas the Klingons, the bird of prey in particular, number one, it's a great name for a ship, because immediately right there, okay, we're conveying what this thing is doing. This thing is meant to attack. It's not here for a pleasure cruise as we view a nebula expelling colorful gas. No, we are here to destroy whatever you're in.
Yep.
And just the way it is that kind of, it's an aggressively postured ship. It seems to be leaning forward over your dead body before you're dead.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's a beautiful ship. And the fact that when the wings are up, it is just a wonderful ship to look at. Wings are down, fine. It still has its, I get it. But it looks best with the wings up. When the wings are up, that thing is the Corvette of starships, which is to say the most beautifully designed thing I've ever seen.
Well, and two, the looking back on all of Trek, but old Trek, Next Gen and DS9 especially, they would always position the birds of prey not nose to nose with the Enterprise or the Defiant or DS9. It would position itself higher, and it would be looking down on the Enterprise. It was always in a position like it was a hawk coming down to snatch you up.
Even in the movie, in Star Trek VI, when the bird of prey shows up, it's above them. You see it circling up, and then it comes down at them.
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot of intelligence to that ship and the way that they used it. So you're right. It may be the best one. I mean, I'm still partial to the but I just divide it into the enemy and the hero class, I guess. That way. The Excelsior has such beautiful lines, but in terms of the ship and its intent and its use, the bird of prey probably is the best one. Now that I think about it, I don't think there's anything that matches that. Certainly not the tinfoil roll enemy that showed up in Star Trek 4. I feel like I'm one of the only people who doesn't like that movie.
But that also had the blah.
It did, yeah. I mean, I don't dislike 4. I just don't enjoy 4. I know what it is. Yes, it's funny at times.
4's fine, but again, 4 is, and you talked about this when you talked about Picard. Season 3 as a whole, and I listened to your last episode, and like you said, like Star Trek should be in space, on starships. That's where it's at its best. And to take a whole movie to have Kirk and Spock just walking around San Francisco, it's not bad, but you're not using this world to its full potential when you do something like that. That can be an episode of a show, fine. But when you only have so many movies that you're going to get out of these guys and you spend a whole movie doing that, it does feel like a waste.
It felt like to me, and again, I don't know anything. I have no insider info. This is pure speculation from the mind of an idiot. I looked at it as, okay, they wanted, as an episode, it would be an hour long. I could see it. Like that, as an episode of Trek, it makes sense. Which is, we want to point out that we are bad to the environment, which I'm there. You don't have to sell me on that. We're destroying everything because we are the true predators in nature. But that felt like it was, we want to hammer you with the fact that we are destroying the environment. And we made a movie about it. As opposed to the best of Trek is when they can incorporate, Arlen's pointed this out too, incorporate the message in a way where you don't necessarily feel like you see it immediately. Like you have to wait to kind of piece it out.
Right.
And you wrap that in this layer of speculative fiction or science fiction, whatever the term is now. And that's what makes it work, because you understand what's being conveyed, but you're also not feeling like somebody is giving you a thesis paper on write why racism is bad in 700 words. Okay, I can do that easily, but it's not fun. Whereas if you point out, okay, this is what inequality looks like.
Right.
Granted, the original series was a little ham-handed about it too. That's why I'm not the biggest fan of the original series. I'm same as you. Next Gen and DS9 are my perfect pairing.
Yeah.
One side is the optimism, one side is the detriment. Like, here's the idealism of the Federation, and here's what happens when you put it in a blender. I think that those two series are the best that Trek probably will ever be, because of their proximity to each other and their general excellence. Don't know if they'll ever get back to that. Okay, if they don't. I'm also not somebody who needs it. I've already got it. I can go back and watch it.
Yep.
But, so yes, the Picard, like the thing with the sun.
That's the worst part. The worst part is the Jack Crusher mystery. And that is my biggest complaint about this show, but also I think modern studio writing is there's a new way of writing mystery, which is the J.J. Abrams mystery box. Like he says, I introduce a mystery box at the beginning of something. And what's in this box? It could be anything. Isn't that interesting? And at the end, we'll open the box. That's not good mystery. That is the worst thing that J.J. Abrams has done to all of Hollywood, because they all do it now. It's not just Star Trek. It's not just his stuff. It's all of Hollywood writes mystery as, hey, they ask a question, and then they basically say, well, it could be anything. Isn't that fun speculating? It could be anything. And then when they open the box at the end, you go, well, how was I supposed to guess what was in this box? It's like
I still hold a grudge about Lost, which is an Abrams property.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Because I remember when that show started, and my wife and I watched it, and I remember interviews where they said, oh, no. It is not going to be metaphysical. This will not be they're not going to all be dead. It's not going to be something like that. We're going to make this science-based. And I'm like, okay, interesting. I like time travel and time displacement and alternate realities. That sounds fun. And then what did we gave up. We gave up in the third season because it became this, let's just keep throwing new things and not explaining them, and new things and not explaining them, and give you nothing. And we were like, we're tired of it. Thanks. We're done. And then what is it? They're all dead. So, liar. Or it's not Khan. Oh, what is it?
Yeah.
Oh, you made a far, far inferior version of Khan. Great. I feel rewarded as somebody sticking it out for this movie. You idiots. And so I do not like that individual and what he does in terms of storytelling. I'm completely there with you. His visuals are fine. He can direct something. Don't let him write it.
Yep.
Don't let him write it.
But the mystery box, which Jack Crusher is a mystery box. And if you can't, as an audience, solve the mystery along with the show, which right now there's really nobody on the show trying to solve the mystery of what's going on. What is Jack Crusher? I mean, now after episode 7, did you watch the latest episode?
I read the recap. I'm fine with spoilers. Okay. Doesn't ruin anything, so I'm caught up.
Well, it literally ends with Vadic saying, it's time you found out what's so special about Jack Crusher. Like, that's literally, it ends with her saying, I'm about to explain to you what he is. But I'll say this. Episode 7 is the first episode where I turned to my wife and I said, that was a good episode. I really liked episode 7.
Good.
Because it was tight storytelling. I was also, when Vadic showed up at the beginning, I'm like, is she ever gonna matter? Is she ever gonna factor? Because everything with her felt like wheel spinning. And episode 7 is where she finally lays it all out. And it is interesting. And she's a well acted character, but she just hasn't had anything going on. And again, the only thing going on with her is mystery. It's like she cuts her hand off and it's a changeling. And you're supposed to wonder, but you're not given any clues as to what that means, where this is going. You need to, in a murder mystery, you have a body. After some investigating, you have a few suspects. And you're going to have a red herring in there, somebody that's maybe a little more suspicious than everybody else. It's not going to be that person. It's like Law and Order. It's never the school principal who they think it is. It's when they went to the school to interview the principal, they passed by a janitor, an awkward janitor, and said, hey, where's the principal's office? And that janitor will be played by like Rainn Wilson or something. And he'll be like, oh, yeah, it's over there. I never knew that kid, but that's awful that happened. And it'll turn out to be the janitor. They'll introduce you to the killer while they're investigating someone else. There's a formula, there's an engaging formula to solving a mystery. And what Picard constantly does is it doesn't give us any clues. It doesn't lead us in any direction. It's just constantly saying, like, well, wonder what that is. I guess we'll find out later. Wonder what that, I don't know. Wonder what that is. There's no clues. And that's the hardest part for me, because the season 3 is much, much better. It's the best Picard has been. And I do feel like most of the characters feel like they're characters. They don't feel like the actors getting back together. They feel like the characters being back together. There's a lot going on that's really good, but it's the lazy mystery, and the there's a scene when they get to the Fleet Museum that really drove me nuts, where they're looking at all the ships. Seven of Nine's looking at the ships, and Jack sits down and he's like, hey, that's the Defiant. I know that. Oh, there's the New Jersey. I know that. Oh, there's Kirk's Enterprise. I know that. And
I thought you didn't like Starfleet. Well, I don't, but I like ships.
Oh, it's the Bird of Prey from Star Trek 4. I wish he had said from Star Trek 4. It would have made me very happy. But so he knows every ship. But then he goes, "Oh, what's that one?" And it's Voyager. And it's that easy
if this
layup.
is a museum where every single ship is the most vital ship in Federation history, and you know all the other ones, how would you not know Voyager?
You know all the other ones, but you don't know the ship that was thrown to the other side of the galaxy. I would argue that maybe outside of Kirk's Enterprise, Voyager should be probably one of the most famous Starfleet ships. Like, just logically in the world, in that world. Everybody should know about the Voyager being thrown into the Delta Quadrant and having to make their way home. Like, everybody should know that. But he doesn't know it, so that we can get a sweet moment with Seven of Nine. And that's what drives me crazy, is they give us this sweet moment that I like, but they don't know how to write a path to that moment that isn't stupid.
Yeah, because the thing that bothered me too in a different way, because I went, that's almost a backdoor insult to Voyager to say that nobody would know that ship.
Right.
You know, where the easy way to write that scene, and I'm not a writer, everyone, so let me make that very clear. I do not write anything. Is he starts to say, oh, and that one, and Seven cuts him off and says, oh, I know that one. That's Voyager. I spent blah, 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 blah. And then she looks at it very wistfully. There, you don't make him into a doofus or, you know, the audience surrogate for here it comes, everybody. And you still accomplish the same thing. And you have it more logically, because Seven would immediately cut him off and be like, I know that ship. Thanks. Right. I was on it.
Yeah,
I'm not just running around with weird red visions in my head like the newcomer.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, bud.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out, you know, a person who doesn't matter really to this entire thing. But that felt like the setup for the spinoff show, which now, of course, they're talking about endlessly. So I'm like, okay, the Jack Crusher character is somehow going to end up on the spinoff with the Titan or whatever. That was a that scene is pretty bad in terms of, okay, I feel like this is trying to elevate Jack Crusher into something.
Right.
I don't mind him as a character. Like, okay, yeah, I like the thing that Beverly and Picard tried a bunch of times, and then, you know, he forgot to put on a condom, and now we have this, and that's fine. I mean, look, you know,
you mean when they were probably both 65?
Well, let's not get into the fact. I mean, look, there's medical miracles in the whatever century we're in, so I guess you can have a child whenever. I'm sure that she knew how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Picard wasn't shooting blanks until probably now, so that's fine. And the fact that the two of them, that there was not some kind of contraception that would be involved, seems odd. So that almost seems like, were they trying to have it? Was this? I mean, whatever. I don't need the details, but it's that setup itself is clunky. But it does. You know, there was always kind of this back and forth with them in TNG where it seemed like at some point they would get together. It never happened. So none of that particularly bothers me. It is more of the way that he's positioned in the show. I think just kind of he sticks out.
Yes, I agree.
And
well, because he is the mystery box.
Yeah.
They keep hitting us with what's going on with Jack, and most of what's going on with him, the other characters don't even know about. So we as the audience see it,
Yeah.
but the characters don't know. So they don't even know that there's a mystery to be solved.
I don't think he told Beverly in episode 6. I think the one I reviewed, he just said, I didn't know how I knew they were changelings, but I did, which is kind of like, okay, I think I know what that's supposed to be leading me to.
Right.
But I think in my review, I barely talked about him. I think most of my stuff was everything else. I don't even think I mentioned him all that much because, he's not really important.
Well, and too, in episode 7, it starts with him he starts to tell Picard, and I thought this is where it's going. He started to tell Picard, something's going on with me. Something's wrong. And he starts to say it, and Picard immediately is just like, "Oh, I've got a plan to trap. I've got a plan to get the upper hand on Vadic." And like the scene on a dime shifts from I'm about to spill the beans about things that are happening to me. I'm having visions. He's about to say it, and Picard just is like, "Oh, I hear what I guess I hear what you're saying, but hold on, I got to tell you about I got a plan," and it doesn't come up for the rest of the episode. It was like you were about to let another character in on what was happening, which would mean that character could start speculating or investigating or asking questions, things that would allow the audience to start to draw conclusions or start to connect their own dots, and it doesn't happen. And it sounds like it's going to happen next episode, but it is frustrating that he's sort of a centerpiece, but also so uninteresting and the worst written part of the show structurally.
Yeah, and I feel like some of that has to be because they were told this is 10 episodes and we have to fill 10 episodes, as opposed to let's write the story beginning to end and let's see how many episodes that requires. That's modern television or streaming, whatever we're calling it. That's a modern problem. Yeah. Instead of saying, because one of my favorite series, I don't know if you've seen it, is the Dark series on Netflix.
No.
3 seasons, front to back. It has a beginning. It has an ending. Doesn't feel like there's barely any wasted time because it's a non-American show. They went into it. This is a German show. They were like, well, this is the story in its completeness that we're telling. And I mean, it has no setup for anything further. It has an ending. It ends. Something else we're not used to anymore. Everything has to be a setup for the next property, whether it's a continuation of this or a spin-off of that or whatever. It has to lead somewhere else. There has to be omnidirectional synergy across multimedia platforms for maximum audience engagement, as opposed to it's storytelling. Stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They don't even necessarily need a middle. You can argue that Fury Road has no middle. They start, turn around, and come back. No middle. It's just road rage. Yep. Great. Exceptional film. Thank you. We don't need this crap. Instead, now everything that's a series has to be this long. Like, why 10 episodes? Why couldn't it be 6 episodes? I think, what was that? I think Devs, which is a great series that was on, it was pandemic or pre, I don't remember now. Alex Garland did it beginning to end. And I think it was 6 episodes. Beautiful. Visually gorgeous. I mean, unbelievably good-looking show.
Yeah.
Great soundtrack. Great story. Fantastic performances. No cliffhanger. No second series. I don't need to know what happens to the characters after this. It's good. We got it. We're wrapped up. Done.
Yeah.
Not 3 seasons and whatever. Here's merchandise. Here's a Dev's Cup. No, stop. It's just a show. That stuff I miss.
Yeah.
Or episodic storytelling, which is what Strange New Worlds is. That's why I like that.
It's like either make Picard 5 episodes and tell a tight story, or make it 20 episodes and put in some episodic, episodes that are just completely self-contained, don't fuel this larger story. It's kind of one or the other. And this settling on 10 episodes for some reason, 10 episodes has proven to be too many.
Yeah, generally 8 is probably the longest I want to see something like this, and I don't even know if I need 8.
Yeah.
I think you can do it in 6. 6 episodes is 3 films. It's a trilogy of films. I think that's generally enough to tell a story.
That would be perfect. I will say, so season 3, there are things. There's I like the look. I'm not gonna complain about that. It's dark, whatever. Like, it's fine. It looks good. I was very impressed. Was it the first episode? I can't remember if it was first episode or second episode, where the Shrike uses the portal weapon to portal the Titan's photon torpedoes back at it.
That was great.
That was a
second
moment
episode.
where I went,
remember that.
That is incredibly cool. As a Star Trek fan, that is cool. There are those moments in this show where I'm like, that is awesome.
And the destruction of that Starfleet building, that is a savage moment when you realize what's going on. Like, that's well done. Unlike, say, Into Darkness, where it just blows up. The fact that it portals and then drops on another part of the city. So not only is anyone in that building dead, anyone under the portal, that she didn't open it up in the same place. She opened it somewhere else because she just wanted to, I don't know, destroy a children's hospital and just wreck it.
Yeah, that was awesome. I fully agree that was awesome. I did think it was funny. They're really obsessed with red in New Trek. It's like the red lady. There's a red door. The red angel in Discovery. There's something about, like, they just love it. There's something about
they
it.
Took the red shirt gag and went too far with it.
Yeah, something like that.
Everybody with a red shirt. Well, red must be a thing.
Red means something. Like, to them, red means something.
And I love red. I love the color red.
No,
but even
fine.
I'm like, okay, you can back off and use green occasionally. You know?
Right. Yeah. Every once in a while, like, let something else creep in. But it is a weird thing. But I wanted to point out that I have a theory that I haven't seen floated out there yet. Because you were talking about in your last episode, or I guess now 2 episodes ago, because we're in part 2 of this, the final battle will be using all these old ships from the Fleet Museum, because they're the only ships that don't have this networked technology built into them that all the new ships do in Starfleet. So it'll be all these characters gotta go commandeer all the old ships, and we'll get to see all these old ships flying and fighting in the final battle. And you've said we're going to get Janeway. And I agree. We're going to get Janeway. But I'm going to go further and say we're going to get a full Captain reunion. We're going to get you're going to think I'm crazy.
No, I don't. Not with this show. No, I don't.
We're going to get Cisco. I think people have already been speculating Cisco, because
I just don't know how. He's a god now. Does he reform just for this battle? I mean, if it's the changelings, maybe.
I think so. I think they'll come. I don't think it'll be good. I don't think they're going to come up with a good reason.
What if it's
why
his
he's
son?
just a guy?
What if it's Jake?
Oh,
what if Jake is the captain? That would make sense. If my father, I had a dream, and my father said, go into Starfleet because I'll need you at a critical time because I can see the future. That would at least make more sense. I don't know if I really like it, because Cisco is awesome, but
that could be. I'm still gonna say they're gonna bring back Cisco. They're gonna bring back Avery?
Avery Brooks.
Avery Brooks.
Yeah, Avery Brooks.
We're gonna have Captain Cisco, and I don't know if you noticed who else is being stored at Daystrom Station, but one of the screens showed the remains of James T. Kirk.
Oh, I missed that. Are we going to get young Kirk from Strange New Worlds? Is it going to be that version?
Well, here's what I'm wondering. What we're being told right now is they're stealing they stole the remains of Picard.
Right.
And the show right now, the characters are speculating it's because the changelings want to recreate a perfect copy of Picard for some reason.
You've seen the theory that it's going to be Locutus, too. That somebody had said, it'll be Borg. They'll do the Borg version because they mentioned how savage he was.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Because they still, they've been talking about Borg, but they haven't done... It's hard when the show's making constant references. You don't know, is this just a reference for nostalgia, or is it going to factor later down the road? But I'm like, okay, if the changelings want this DNA or whatever to make a copy of Picard, it's like, are we gonna get what does that mean? But the fact that they also showed us, because it's one of the things that Riker stops and looks at. He looks at a screen that's just like a rotating 3D model of like biometric readings of a body, and it says remains James T. Kirk on the top, and they do a little original Trek music sting when they show it. I
missed that. I think I was still flipping out over the Genesis device.
Yeah,
what, the Genesis device?
It was in between the Genesis device and the attack tribble. It was the thing in between those two things. Which,
I completely missed it.
But I'm thinking, I believe that they are going to go balls to the wall, and they're going to give us this ship reunion. They're pulling ships. Oh, also in all those ships was the NX-01 from Enterprise was also one of the ships at the Fleet Museum. So I question whether or not we're even going to get Archer. I think we're going to get.
Oh no! Would they make him an emitter, like a hologram version?
Something. Yeah, I think they're going to go for a balls to the wall, full like nostalgia overload from all the shows. That's my gut. We're going to have Jane, and I think it's going to be like Janeway commandeers Voyager. You're going to have Kirk's Enterprise, like some weird, and maybe you're right, maybe it'll be like holographic in nature, who knows? But we're going to have Kirk on the Enterprise. We're going to have Cisco, and maybe Cisco is just like this omnipresent being. Maybe he won't be literally controlling a ship, but because I could see Worf commandeering the Defiant.
Oh, he'll be on the Defiant for sure. I mean, they've set that up so hard.
Yeah. But I think we're going to get everybody back for some kind of big blowout at the end. It's going to be a captain reunion.
It could be. I mean, you're right. It does line up with what they're doing. Because they really are trying to pull everything out that's been there.
Yeah.
So,
and one of the reasons
you know Odo would be in this show if the actor wasn't dead.
Oh,
there is no question Odo would have been on that thing somehow saying this is the change. He would have been the person saying this is the changelings type of
I'm
thing.
surprised they didn't try to just do like a CG, like maybe he can't hold his form anymore, so he's just in his liquid form. I'm surprised they didn't try.
I think they thought that was still a line they didn't want to cross. I think there's at least the. I hope that's what it was that they went. There's no way. I mean, you could have easily with a changeling too. You could have made him a CG because it's not like you have to recreate the actor's face. Literally, he can look whatever.
Right.
So.
I'm
sort of surprised.
I think you're
by
right.
That too.
You're probably right that it's there's enough respect there still. Somebody said that's a bad idea. Like,
I hope so.
But I because they're so clearly, especially in the last couple episodes, they're so clearly telegraphing that we're gonna have Admiral Janeway show up. That my gut tells me that that's not an exciting enough
I agree.
Finale, cameo. That's not to have Janeway joins the fight is not like a holy shit moment. It's cool. It'll be fun when it happens, but it's not a big enough deal. They need to do something from their perspective that's an even bigger deal.
No, you make a good point. Yeah, I mean, I missed the Kirk thing, or I'd be sitting here going, yeah, because they don't do that stuff accidentally. So, yeah, maybe it's I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if I'm gonna like it.
I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know if like I want it. But I'll say this too. There's the show has done a good job of giving me, when they said I got spoiled on Ro Laren coming back before I watched the episode.
That was good.
Like right before I watched the episode, of course, I looked at Twitter or something, and there was a picture of it, and I'll give the show credit for giving me something that I didn't know I would care about, and that's the closure with Ro Laren. Because I did really like her as a character, but if you asked me like, what would they do with Ro that you'd be interested? It's like I would just be like, I don't know, like. But
no, I agree. I would
give you
never
something very satisfying.
I would never have picked her as a top 5 for. Okay, we're gonna have a side character for Next Gen come into this somehow. Who would it be? I would never have thought of Ro Laren.
Yeah,
but this episode is a high point for sure. I mean, their back and forth is great, and her death scene is fantastic.
Yeah, it was really good. It was. I got a little misty, and I was shocked that the show, was. Even if it's maybe cheap emotionally, that it had that ability, because you still have to be able to write. It's like the actors have to be able to do a good job acting, but you have to write that stuff. You have to earn it, and even though they did the thing that drives me crazy with Picard, which is they introduce something and get rid of it by the end of that episode, and they did that with Ro. It's like, hey, Ro's back, never mind. I hate that when something's like, this is the most important, that we have to go get this thing, it's super important. Like season 1, it was was it Daj or Soji, whichever twin they killed in the first episode. Yeah. It's like, she's super important. Well, no, she's dead, never mind. We have to get Maddox. We got Maddox. Well, he's dead. Never mind. It's just constant, like, when 7 of 9 came into season 1, was she only in one episode? It was, hey, it's 7 of 9. And
1 or 2 max. That was it.
I think it was 1. Because they introduce her, they introduce the villain, and they kill that villain and abandon 7 of 9 in that episode. It's a twofer of setting something up and getting rid of it by the end of that episode. So it didn't matter. That show, the season 1 was just constant things that don't matter. And when you got to the end, none of them mattered. But they
Even
did.
Picard's death didn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately.
Stupid is that?
Yeah. I'll give him credit for, this season is, I think season 2 didn't even mention the fact that he wasn't really Picard anymore. It's not his
barely. They may have mentioned it offhandedly. But
yeah.
Not much.
But the fact that this season that's a giant plot point is kind of like, okay, well, at least you said, let's figure out a way to not just have this be a hand wave of, it was the whole, ultimately at the end, it was the whole point of season 1. Like, we can't just ignore it. Like, it has to be for something. So I'll give him credit for that.
Yeah, I am curious how it's going to end.
I am too.
And like I said, because now there's so much set up for the spinoff with the Titan, where even one of the showrunners has a name for it now, Legacy or something, I think it is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I hope it's not too much of setup. And are they going to kill Picard off again or not? I really don't know. I think it's a coin toss at this point.
That's another big question, is who are they going to kill off? Because I worry that we're not going to get the thing that I think that this show needs, which is the entire next gen cast standing together in a single shot. Like you have to get that at the end. That should be the last shot of the show, is all of those people standing on the bridge of a ship all together. And I'm worried that for dramatic reasons, not all of these characters are going to make it to the end. And I think that would be a big mistake. And I'm worried that it's a mistake they're going to make, because
I'm convinced it's going to be Worf. I just have a terrible feeling that's where they're going with Worf.
Yeah.
I mean, it is not necessarily something that Worf wouldn't do, is die for everybody else. I mean,
right.
It's clearly in character, but at this point, I don't want it. I like Worf. I've liked Worf all the time. I thought, he's a great character, and he's always a reliable part of the show. So I know people are like, well, not everybody can live. That's not how adventure works. I understand that, but you know what? It doesn't always have to work like that.
No, they've earned it. They've earned a happy ending.
Change the settings of the test, man. It's fine.
Yeah. We and that's because whichever episode it was where it was called. It's the episode that's called No Win Scenario. I forget which number that is, but that was an episode that was constantly telegraphing that Riker was going to sacrifice himself to save the ship. And it there was a logic to it. It made sense. He couldn't save his son, so he was going to save Picard's son. And the Titan is still his ship. Like he views it as his command. And he got this crew in this mess, and that whole episode, he's trying to like record a message to Deanna, and he's incredibly down, and it's just constantly sort of saying Riker's going to sacrifice himself. And I was so angry the whole episode, because I'm like, they're going to do it. They're going to kill Riker. How dare this show kill Riker? And they didn't do it. And I give the show, again, I give it a lot of credit, because it was really selling me hard on the fact that this guy is gonna go out in a hero's sacrifice, but I don't want any of them to go out in a sacrifice. I want them all to make it to the end, and I want them all standing on the bridge. Ideally, they'd be standing on the bridge of a Galaxy-class starship, but I don't think we're gonna get that. I think maybe we'll get them on the Enterprise E, which is at the Fleet Museum. But I'm worried that there's going to be an empty spot. And I think it might be... I could see them killing Crusher. Because, again, it's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself for my son. I could see them doing something like that. I could see them like weighing the options of, well, who are people going to care more about standing at the end, and them saying, well, people love Worf, people love Riker, like, ooh, but how many like hardcore Crusher fans are out there?
Probably not many.
So it's like, that's maybe the safer person to like have a sacrifice. And I want them all to make it to the end. I want them all to have a happy ending. But again, drama and easy emotion and current studio writing say the way you get emotion out of your viewers is to kill legacy characters. That's all they know how to do. So maybe I could see them killing the new Data body.
Yeah, Data 2. Yeah.
Yep. That's another thing.
It's a big deal, because you could transfer him out, I guess. So whatever.
Well, I'll say this too, because you haven't seen 7 yet, but he gets a little more to do in 7, and one really high point of the last couple episodes has been Brent Spiner as Lore. He's so we never really saw him do this thing where he's playing both characters at the same time, like as a performance, not as a split screen or whatever. And he is really good when he like kind of huffs and laughs to him, chortles to himself and becomes Lore. And his all of Brent Spiner's mannerisms change, his delivery changes, and you just see Lore emerge. He's so good at it. And for, I think especially season 1, where I was so disgusted with him in his Data makeup when they were trying to make him look like young Data, and he looked
bad.
horrific. He looked so bad. And even his voice was raspy. It was almost like he hadn't spoken in a year, and getting on set was like the first. So it's supposed to be, and maybe it's just because they were trying to make him look young, but he sounded so old and raspy. And his performance in, again, especially episode 7 here, where Data and Lore are kind of, the personalities are battling a little bit more, and you get a little more of each of them. I always really liked Lore. I always really liked Lore episodes of Next Gen, and having Lore back in some form, I'm glad he's seemingly not going to be the villain of the show. Because I had heard that going in. That was one of the possibilities.
Well, that's what it seemed like from the trailers and stuff. So I was the same way. I was dreading that he would be somehow behind. I mean, don't get me wrong. Lore did have that whole thing where he teamed up with. I mean, he did he was the leader of. Oh God, what am I forgetting in Next Gen? Where he shows up with the. Is it it's not the Borg? Is it? It's somebody else.
Yeah,
who does he show up with? Is it the Borg?
Well, yeah, it's the Borg. It's
it is
the
okay.
Descent part 1 and 2. Are,
So he's done that kind of thing where he's been the front man for a bigger group before, but it didn't make any sense with the Changelings.
Right. Yeah, why would they care about Lore?
Also, I do love the fact that they went with the Changelings instead of the Borg. The most overused villain ever is the Borg. So the fact that they went with the Changelings, because like I said, I love the Dominion stuff. All that is great, and then I read the thing about the Cure, except not, and or not that which I agree. Vadic, I would have been fine if Vadic was simply being used by the Changelings, but I'm glad it's more than that. That would have been fine because the Changelings are savage enough that they will just utilize whatever tools are there, and if they manipulated some, because I did like the fact that she was braggy and all that stuff when talking to Picard, but then when she was talking to the Changeling off her hand, she seemed much more timid. I was like, okay, that's I kind of dig that this could be something where they've got her under control. That would have been okay. Well, and literally maybe just disposed of her, but I like that it's more than that.
I do think that there's still more going on with her, because that's something that's still not explained, is why she does sort of come in and out of this. She sort of has two personalities, and it early on read like when she would cut that changeling off of her stump, that she would, it's like her real personality would emerge, and then when the changeling was connected to her, that's what was sort of the dominant personality. And that might still be what's happening, but it's still not clear, even after like learning her origins in episode 7. She still is doing that. At the end of that episode, there's a part where she's like, you see her become that timid, meek version of herself. So I still don't know what's exactly going on, because also she's sort of setting up like she's the leader of all of this, but clearly she's not. She's answering to somebody else. So we still don't even know that part. There's still more going on, but I do think she's becoming a much more interesting villain, and I wish they had done some of this work sooner.
Earlier. Yeah. Well, I think that got kind of pushed aside because they were trying to do so much. Again, you could see where they were trying to push the Jack Crusher thing very hard, and it's just a casualty of this type of storytelling that it doesn't work. And I think we agree that's the larger problem, is that this is an overextended story. And so that's where the weakness comes in, because there is a lot of filler. There's a lot of, how many scenes do we really need of Jack Crusher having a episode where he sees something? We need 2 max.
Right.
One scene can be like, oh, that's interesting, and 2 to establish that it happens a lot. That's it. Done.
Yeah. Well, and when you really look at it, every episode of a show like this, at the end of it, I say, what happened in this episode? How much farther forward did the story get in this 45 minutes? And man, episodes, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, whatever, it ain't much. If you say what happened in this episode, it's like, well, I guess they got out of that space anomaly that they fell into. Okay.
Yeah.
But
did I need 40 minutes of?
Yeah, but did I need 40 minutes of? Yeah, it's like, okay, there was some nice little character bits, and that's what almost every episode has been like. You're not telling me a story. You're just giving me these nice little moments. And episode 7 was the first time I'm like, you're telling me a story, and there's some really good stuff. And I'll just say, there's a really great scene with Geordi and Data in episode 7, where Geordi and again, it's a thing I never knew I needed, which was Geordi talking about how Data's death affected him, and he gets to tell Data that. Really good scene.
Well, like you said, and that's a recurring thing, is because Data's reactivation is at the end. You don't get much of it, or you get a little tiny bit of it, but you don't get a whole. You don't get the character beat when he first gets reactivated. He just flips between 4 personalities, and then that's kind of it. And it's kind of like, okay, got it, but
right,
we could have let that breathe a bit more, as opposed to
yeah.
But you're right. It is the biggest kind of problem is that there are large segments that feel like they're just character scene. Okay, we need to waste 3 minutes. Character scene. We need to now waste 3 minutes of the crew going around and pulling panels off of a wall. Okay, now it's a character scene, and that's kind of what it suffers from. And that is because they have to fill time, as opposed to packing that stuff in.
I'd love to see. I'm sure people have done this with maybe season 1. I don't think you could do it with season 2, but with this season in particular, I'd love to see, once it's all done, I would love to see somebody do a fan edit to like pull the whole thing down to a 3-hour story.
Man, you read if you listen, which I know you haven't, I'm not telling you to do this, but I have been once I found out how good fan edits could be, that is kind of my, no matter how bad something is, there's a good chance somebody can save it.
Yeah.
In terms of modern films, like there's an edit of Alien Covenant and Prometheus called Paradise, which I never shut up about, because it is such a masterwork of an edit to take 2 movies, both of which I own and have watched and enjoy parts of, and it cuts the fat out. It dials it in and makes a really good, cohesive, I think 2 hour 15 or so movie. And he's mimicking shots where you can see like they jump forward and backward in time, but you can see in a way that you don't when you watch the movie separately, unless if you're really a film person, you would probably notice it. I didn't go to film school or anything, so I'm not as quick on this stuff. But he has it where you see where Scott is mimicking and echoing his own shots. Mm-hmm. So the forward and backwards time jumps are really good. They make a lot of sense and almost make it seem like this is the movie it should have been.
Yeah.
So I was thinking the same thing, is when this series is over, somebody's going to dial this thing down into either a 2-hour part movie with like a dun dun dun, which I would actually kind of dig from like the old series where it says to be continued, whatever. Yeah. And that's where they're falling into the hole, the gravity hole, and he's like, we're not going to be able to escape. Cut to black, dun dun, to be continued. Okay, next episode. So somebody will do that.
I will say I really loved when Riker told Picard, "You just killed us all." He said it so mean. He said it so mean.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's badass.
Well, that's the stuff that does save the rest of it. That overpowers the weak points. Is you do get these really good. The thing with Riker and Picard in the room where he's talking about his son, That's a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where when that happens, I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't care about the filler because I got that.
Right.
Because it really is where he's saying, because all this time Riker's like, no, I'm not running. And he's finally like, yeah, I was running. Because, and little clever things, like the fact that Deanna as an empath will know he's covering. Of course she knows.
Yeah.
She knows what's actually going on. You never think about how their relationship would be. If you're married to an empath, you are not able to guard anything. She's going to know. That's all wonderful stuff that we never got in the original show.
Yeah.
So part of
if you're that broken and you can't just put on a happy face for everybody.
Yeah.
That's
or that Picard doesn't remember that Jack asked him that question when he was telling his stories to the kids. He doesn't remember it.
Yeah.
Like there's little stuff like that. And that is part of where I'm just like, okay, I'm just so happy it's not written like complete garbage at this point that I am overcompensating. Like I'm aware of my overcompensation because I'm just happy to see these characters have some good moments.
Right.
And that's where you're correct. Fan edit will solve that.
If this was season 1 of Picard, granted, like, there's obviously things that we've picked up along the way, Raffi, and there's a little bit, but if basically this was the plot of season 1 and this is how it was written, I think for the most part people would be responding pretty positively to it. I don't think it's all just that seasons 1 and 2 were set such a low bar that, oh, this is not complete garbage, so I'm enjoying it. I think it does have a lot of good things going for it. For all my big complaint is just the structure of the storytelling is still the same mystery box storytelling of especially season 1. I can't really speak to season 2 because I didn't watch it, but
it was the same, at least at what I saw. It was going in the same direction as 1.
Yeah.
And so from what I've read, it was the same as season 1.
That's at the end of all of this complaining. That's still my problem, but everything else has been elevated, and there's a lot of good to see.
Well, but in a sense, it's not necessarily even complaining, because what we're talking about is this show is succeeding, even though it is still shackled to this bad structure. Yeah. Even though this is still operating on a flawed formula for its type of storytelling, which is really what we're saying.
Yeah.
The show is still, compared to even the first season, and yes, it may be a low bar, but it is a bar it has cleared nonetheless. So let's not overlook the fact that not only is it is legitimately, I think, a good show. Not a great show, not a bad show, which I cannot say about the first 2. I've told people, burn your eyes out of your head before you watch the first 2.
Yeah.
That's how, especially if you like Picard as a character in the Federation or in Next Gen, don't watch season 1 and 2, because what it paints is basically a rejection of all of that. I think what they were aiming for with 1 and 2 was to try to do what DS9 did, to test the ideals of the Federation. The problem is they didn't know how to do it properly.
Right.
And so they dropped the ball so badly.
And I'll say too, like, writers write for themselves, and writers write what they're feeling at the time, and it's very obvious seasons 1 and 2 were very Trump reactionary, and Republican reactionary. It's a lot of, and I actually think this was something that intrigued me. The first episode of Picard season 1. The idea that the Federation, the idea that Picard basically left Starfleet and the Federation behind him because it wasn't the Starfleet that he believed in anymore. I actually thought was an interesting thing to explore, because what do they say, that tyranny is only one generation away,
one generation
whatever
by one generation.
Yeah. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be interesting? Because it's been a long time since we've seen what's been going on in this world. And wouldn't it be interesting if these sort of, the Federation became a little too comfortable, and slowly these elements of xenophobia or whatever started to slowly take hold. And what if all of a sudden one day Picard turns around and his values don't align with Starfleet's values anymore, and like systemically? I was like, that's actually kind of interesting. I'm interested to see where this goes. But then immediately after that first episode, that's not what the show was about at all.
Right.
It never addresses it ever again, basically.
Yep.
It's just a setup for a lazy setup for why there were synths and why synths were banned, and why that gets us. It's a lazy setup to get us to Dr. Soong at the end, and that's all it's there for. It's really it's meaningless to the larger story. But if it had been the theme of the whole show, I think it would have been an interesting idea to explore, but they didn't.
Yeah, no, you can. I totally agree. You can do, again, Deep Space Nine is the one of the things I always point out about Deep Space Nine, and why I think it's such a significant and important, if not the most important show in a sense in Trek, is no starship, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And it took all the utopian ideals and started to say they're not always going to work. They're not.
Yeah.
You can't. There is no such thing as a perfectly functioning utopia. So that idea can be explored. But as you said, it was bait and switch. This was not what the show was.
Yep.
Instead of, and honestly, and this is going to sound counterintuitive to what we've said a bunch, is I think if you're going to do that, you need a longer show to set up how it rots. You can't just jump to rot.
Right.
You need to have flashbacks that show, segments of time where these little bits of, because corruption doesn't generally happen overnight. It is the end result. These types of things are the end result of multiple things that have happened in the background. And that's what I think the larger point could have been, is you're not just going to turn around and the place is going to look different than it did yesterday. No, you're going to realize that there was a series of things that have changed what you thought it was into something else. And you just didn't notice, because in a utopia, you get awful comfortable. And it's easy to overlook what's not affecting you.
Yeah. Well,
that's a story. But that's not what it was.
The biggest problem right away was the fact that they have now mass-produced android slaves.
Oh,
and if that wasn't the thing that caused Picard to turn his back on the Federation and Starfleet, I don't know
how
would
do you
have
take something that is a inverse of what many people consider the best episode of Next Gen.
Yeah.
And that was where I went, oh my, they have not watched the show.
Yep.
They haven't watched the show. How could you do this? And if you had seen that, you didn't even watch the Cliff Notes version where somebody said, give me the top 10 episodes where it'll tell me what Trek is. That's going to be in there.
Yeah.
And it's so fundamental that to then have it where they're okay with, they talk about a bunch of Datas being a slave race. They specifically say it. And what we end up in with Picard is a slave race of androids.
Yeah.
And you thought this was going to work?
Yeah.
I'm not going to start on that again. I don't want to end the show on negativity.
That's fair. That's fair.
But, I could, anyway.
But
I know.
And I did want to point this out too, real quick.
Sure.
Because it's something that I was thinking about today, and I thought it was funny. It was all season 3 is this giant course correction, and it's a giant. It's very obvious that they said, what mistakes did we make? Let's not make those mistakes again. But what it made me realize, I was thinking about that, because it is clearly such a giant course correction based on the complaints and based on people's reaction to seasons 1 and 2. But that also made me realize, because there's a ton of online, especially Twitter, but social media, there's a ton, I should say, as the shows were coming out, ton of positive social media around these shows. And I'm now it was just today I realized, oh, that was all bought and paid for. Because if it was genuine, why did they make this giant course correction? So now I'm more convinced than ever that all the positivity for Picard season 1 and 2, all of it was bought and paid for, and brown nosers to the studio.
And that's why when RLM said that this wasn't bad, that was the thing that made me go, okay. I didn't care. The rest was, yeah, okay. But when that was the real turning point for me. I'm like, if these guys are saying this isn't a trash fire,
yeah,
I have to at least give it a shot. Because they hate everything else.
Yeah. And
so when somebody like that turns around, I'm like, oh, well, that must mean something.
Yeah, and I'm honestly watching the show. I'm still really, I mean, we'll see, because they haven't talked about it since the first few episodes. I forget what they reviewed so far.
They went up to 4 or 5. I think it stopped. I think it was 4. I think it stopped. Yeah, because they said this could be a complete movie, and that was after the escape from the dead ship thing, and that was 4.
Yeah. I am surprised they're as positive about it as they are, based on their not their feelings of the Picard seasons 1 and 2, but just their feelings on sort of all new Trek. I'm really surprised that that they're as positive about it as they are.
I think they have a worse version of what I have, which is they have been so let down further than me, because I actually like some of the new stuff. So there's less of a bounce back for me because I didn't hate everything. When you get down that well and you just, honestly, at one point I think they said we've given up on Trek. That's it. When you get to that point,
he said something that Mike said that it was starting to affect the old shows for him. He said he couldn't do it anymore because his feelings about new Trek were starting to seep into the old Trek that he loves. That's a pretty powerful statement.
Yeah, that's bleak. Yeah, I never had that problem, but I understand.
No,
and that's what I mean about to then see something and realize that at the very least it's not as terrible as everything else. I think that's part of what's important. The same way I'm saying that that's part of mine. So when I'm gushing about it, part of that is simply because I was so let down by Picard 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And so the course correction is amplified by the fact that those other two are so bad. And then at least, I said this in my review, I said, at least this is coming at the end. I'd rather it ended better than start good and dive, because then it just ends with a terrible... So, and maybe that's part of it too for them is, okay, there's no more Picard after this, or at least that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
So at least it's not ending in the same dismal, like if it ended like 1 and 2, you have ruined the character, period. It's done. At least this isn't ruining all these characters. So that's probably part of it. That's my guess. I don't know, but that's a supposition.
Do you think, I think you think that Shaw will be part of a spin-off?
That's what it sounds like.
Kind of the word is out there.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like from what I've seen, is that the Titan in general is supposed to be with Jack Crusher on the crew somehow. My gut
is that Shaw is not going to make it to the end of season 3.
That's the other thing I'm wondering, is he dies and Jack Crusher or Seven becomes the captain somehow. I don't know why Crusher would, but I won't put it beyond the show to bend everything to that.
Yeah. Because again, it's like if you're not gonna, if they're gonna do the smart thing and not kill legacy characters, they still are going to think that killing a character is a way to create an emotional moment. And they don't have a whole lot of characters. I mean, I don't think they would kill Sydney LaForge. I think that would be a huge mistake. I think she's probably a fan favorite.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Right now, I don't think you should do that.
And she's too new. She's too new for the impact they want.
Yeah.
They want legacy death if they want anything.
But Shaw is this broken man, post-traumatic stress, and he's I don't really I really like the actor, and I like his performance, but I hate that it's so unbecoming of a Starfleet captain. I hate how just like foul-mouthed and disheveled, and like I get the like that he hates Borg, so he is very rude to Seven of Nine and to Picard. But there is something about like you're a captain, like you should carry yourself like a captain. It's weird that he plays it like I mean he plays it almost like oh shoot, what was the cigar chomping captain from season 1 and 2?
It was the Spanish guy's name.
Yeah.
Oh God, what is his name? Rios?
Rios. Yes, it's Rios. It's almost like they wanted that type of a character again. But it just, again, the image of a Starfleet captain for me is something very specific.
They wanted to buck the kind of professionalism. That's what they're trying to go against the idea of the stalwart military, because even Sisko in his anger would still maintain that composure, and that's what they wanted. You're right, they wanted another Rios. They wanted to kind of play the I know you have a time crunch, so I don't want to talk on for too far here. Do we still have a little time? Because
we got a little time.
Sure I get you. Okay.
Yeah.
Here again, if you do this character properly, what I would have preferred, me as nobody, but Shaw should have been very similar to Vatic. In fact, it would have been a nice mirroring effect. On the bridge, he's all business. And he says to the captain and Riker, "Can I speak to you in my ready room?" And that's where he lets it all out. But not in front of not in front of the crew. And that's okay. That this idea that there's this simmering thing inside, because I don't want the sterile captain. That will become boring. It will. The guy who's just, Picard at times bordered on that, but they played with it. Riker was the offset to that. That's what they did smart there. They went, okay, Riker and Picard are the same person. It's different sides of the personality. Great. Brilliant. That's your show. You got it. They nailed it. So you don't want somebody who's just by the book all the time, because that's a boring person to be interested in. You want the flaws. Yeah. But you're right. They did, and Rios was fine because Rios was out on his own, basically, so it didn't matter with him. Shaw is the captain of a flagship. Yeah. You're not going to leave somebody like that. Doesn't make captain. There is decorum. There is, the crew has to defer to you with absolute authority. That is not going to work if they think you're going to break down and start crying on the bridge. If you see a person with an implant in them. Why is Seven even there? I mean, there again, if he's that way, Seven would never be on the bridge to begin with. So that logic kind of breaks down.
No kidding.
So, which I'm not complaining about, because I think Jerry Ryan is great. I love Seven. I think she's, compared to where she started to where she is, great. Mm-hmm. And that's why I hope she is a captain. Maybe she'll take over for Shaw, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, that would be. I would be interested to see that.
I'll tell you what my dread was.
What?
This is a worst case, cynical, oh my God, the stupidest thing they could do scenario. Is I at one point, because when Jack started having the flashbacks, my immediate thought is, oh, he's a changeling. It's the link calling him back. Come back to us, or whatever it's saying. Return to me. That's the link, right? And then they showed the picture of Odo, and I went, oh no. Because then when I read the thing about Vatic and the face she took, my thought was, tell me this is Odo who's taken on Jack Crusher's form for some reason. Is this what they're going to do? Like, that was a worst case thought in my head. But honestly, and I don't believe that. Yeah. But the fact that I know how these shows are written, and I sit there and go, oh God, is this how they would shoehorn Odo in? Is that for some reason, and that would be the CG moment where he shifts back and says, I decided that this was the face of a former life, and I wanted to take on a new face for a new life. That I will live among the stars. It's like, stop.
I'll say this because next week, this coming week, we're going to find out, I guess, what the deal is with Jack. But there are hints. There seem to be hints. There was offhanded lines in episode 7 that are just like, you don't know what he is. And that could, that's like lazy studio writing. That could just be literally anything. But a little part of me is almost wondering if he even is Picard's son at this point. Like, I don't even know. And I think it's going to be like, well, he's got Picard's DNA and Crusher's DNA, but he's not really their child. He's something else.
Oh, yeah.
He's
well, they've
some
already
kind of
pointed out
entity.
that the changelings have evolved now, so you can take that as far as you want.
Yeah.
And the thing that, to me, was the big telegraph, or maybe it was a misdirect, because the show does misdirect. I will give it credit. You said it, and they do a good job of it, is when he kills the 4 people, and she says, how'd you know they're changelings? And he said, I didn't. Well, yeah, he did, because he knows his own people. So he killed bad, and they have said that the changelings had a schism of some kind.
Yes.
So it's possible he's a good changeling, and they are bad, or whatever. So there's ways to do it. I mean, yes, they are hammering on this idea of him not being a human being too hard for it not to be something. What that is.
God, it just dawned on me what he is.
Go for it.
Oh boy. I mean, it doesn't answer all the questions, but when Vadic explains her origin, she explains that the Federation was experimenting on them,
right?
They were experimenting on changelings to create a changeling that could be a perfect, undetectable duplicate.
Is Crusher part of the experiments? She's a medical doctor. Wow.
I'm like, well, that clearly has to, now that I'm just thinking about it, clearly that's a piece of the puzzle of what Jack is. Jack is an undetectable changeling. But who, and because she's like, because they could, an undetectable spy that could be placed anywhere and and could be anybody. So it's, now I'm wondering.
What is he, a sleeper agent? It's just as simple as that. He's a sleeper agent?
But a sleeper agent for who? Because just because he's a changeling, we now know the Federation developed the technology to make sleeper agent changelings. So he's going to be a sleeper agent for somebody.
And why are his eyes glow red sometimes, too? I don't get that. There's something okay. And I want to point out for people listening, we're recording this on the 1st of April. So this is, when this part comes out, Part 8 will have aired. Maybe they'll have answered this by now. So we're speculating before the 8th episode is out. Just so nobody's like, they answered it. Well, yeah, they did, but in the future. So just so we're clear.
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. But now we're falling into the mystery box thing. We're doing
right.
We're doing
it. It could be anything. I mean, again, the mystery box, now that we're this far in, it has only just now given us a couple scraps.
Yeah.
To speculate on. Up until episode 7, it has been a complete mystery box. This could be absolutely anything. He could be Borg. He could be a wormhole alien. He could be a changeling. He could be anything.
Wormhole alien brings Cisco.
Yep.
There's a tie to Cisco.
I've seen that floated around because I think when the was it when the Pa wraiths? There's I think an episode of DS9 where the Pa wraiths
they have red eyes.
Yeah, they possess people and they have red eyes.
Oh,
so I've heard people point that out too. So that might be, and it's linked to the changelings.
That's I was going to say. This does link it back to DS9.
Yep.
Wow, now that you say that, where in the hell are they going? Okay, well. I'll say this: if it is that, I'm going to be curious how the hell that works, because that's they've avoided. God, they've avoided so much of that. I mean, even the changelings are only known to some of these people. Like 7 doesn't know what they are, so you're relying on a sub storyline from a series that is only really just now being resurrected, which is I'm not against it. I prefer this to another version of the Borg, to the point where the Borg are basically jokes. So I'm fine with not doing the Borg or the Klingons, or like they've done all the other villains multiple times.
Yeah.
So it's really just the Zindi, which nobody cares about, or the Changelings at this point. Like, they're not bringing the Zindi back. They're not.
No.
Or the whatever the other creatures were that were around. I don't remember what they were called, like the numbered creatures. So they've done Q. They've done it all. So really, all that's left is the Changelings. Yeah, the pod wraiths would be. That would be a fascinating. God, would they bring back Gul Dukat at that point? I mean, I'd love to see him. The guy's great. But
yeah, I'd be. From what I understand, nobody likes working with that actor, so I don't know if he would be. I don't know if he would be asked back, but
well, then it'll just be what's his face? The one who appears in every Trek. Reanimator. What's his name?
Oh, Jeffrey Combs. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jeffrey Combs will be the villain. Okay,
God,
fine.
I would love to get him back.
So why not?
That would be awesome. I think it's going to be balls to the wall. I love, they've sprinkled in some cameos. There's a Voyager cameo in
I read about
episode
that. Yes.
7. Yep.
I'm assuming he looks great because, I mean, when you put people in makeup, we're talking about Tuvok. Whatever.
Yes,
Might as well just say it.
We're talking about
the rest.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, at this point, it's multiple episodes.
It should be two Vics. They should have brought two Vics.
Yeah,
back.
That would have been great. I'll say, the Star Trek, the actually nerd in me was a little mad that Tuvok, the actor, looks old at this point, and they let him look old, and it bothers me a little bit that he wouldn't look this old at this point.
Yeah, Vulcans don't age like that.
Yeah, they age
I'm
at
surprised.
like a fraction of the speed. They should have, he's got the salt and pepper hair, but it's also clearly a wig. I mean, I could be wrong, but it looks like it's a wig. So it's like you could have at least just given him black hair and, smoothed out a couple lines.
I was going to say, because they CG smoothed out Picard a little bit, and it looked fine.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't do it massively with the cutback or the flashback scene, so you could do it. Huh.
So, no, he looks pretty old, but it would be interesting if they really wanted to go balls to the wall with my Captain reunion theory. It would be interesting if they tried to get more people from all of the crews to come back and be involved in like the final battle.
I mean, at this point, why not?
Right.
You're already, like you said, taking every piece on the chessboard and throwing it into the mix. So why not start bringing as many people back as are willing to do it? I mean, not everybody. Like Kira, I'd love to see Kira show back up.
Yes.
That would be great.
I guess of anybody, we probably would have a better shot at her showing up, a better shot maybe at Chief O'Brien.
Yeah, I figured that probably. Now, here's the thing that there's no chance they do, because at this point they would have done it already. But if I was going to revamp this show, keep the same basic structure, okay, here's what I'm doing, because this is one of my favorite characters of all time. When they realize it's the Changelings.
the Barber.
Yes, exactly. How'd you know? No. Once they realize it's the Changelings and they don't know what to do, what do you call it? Somebody says, well, there was this, God, what were they called? There was this Cardassian spy who operated on Deep Space Nine for a while. Let's see if he'll help us. And Garrick shows up. You bring Garrick back, I forgive all sins. You could melt the rest of them into sludge if Garrick's standing over him with the trigger. I'm great.
That would be good. That could still happen.
It could, but I doubt it. I mean, that's too far out.
But you're right. There was a place in the story where you could have done it and had it be very impactful.
Yeah.
Now it's just at this point it would just be a cameo.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I could see them doing that.
Garrick would have been great, man.
It'd be
that
fun
character
to see,
was so awesome.
like what he's up to now.
Yeah, exactly. So they went to to ask him when the Changelings were teamed up with the Cardassians, did you find out any vulnerabilities about them? Because that's what the Cardassians would have done. They would have found out a thing. So yeah, but that's just for me. I mean, I know that's nonsensical in a show that's already overpacked. So, but that's one of my favorite characters of any of the shows is Garrick. He was always great.
Yeah.
Actually, okay, wait a minute. There is a way. Now I'm writing the fan fiction, and now after this I'll stop. I promise. But in the final battle, the Doctor and Garrick show up, and you find out they've been working together as some kind of intergalactic PI agency. Like they're working together to solve mysteries out in and they're just a couple now. Whatever.
Yep.
Garrick and the Doctor are a couple. They go around. They're the A-team of the universe. If nobody else can help you, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire Garrick and Bashir, PIs.
Yes.
Make that show. Make that show.
I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. That would be fun.
That would be a lot of fun. All right. Well, I know that I'm not going to keep you on here forever because, we both have day jobs and you have to get to yours at some point. So, but thanks for coming on. This was a blast.
Yeah. Super fun. Whenever we can make this happen, I'm always up for it.
Well, maybe we'll do when Picard ends, we'll find a time slot where we can do a series review.
Okay.
Because my co-host will never watch it. I mean, or he'll take so long. He's got a family and everything. I understand it, but he has no time. I end up doing reviews where it's me monologuing at him for half the show, as you probably heard. So, and that's okay. I don't mind doing it. I can fill the room with hot air for forever. So it's not like I'm not built for this, but it's nice to have somebody who's actually seen the thing occasionally.
Yes.
So as a reminder, you can find Brian's work over at youtube.com/HatHoleHomeVideo. Is there anything else you want to promo? Because I always give the floor to the person if there's anything else upcoming or whatever.
That's where I'm being creative on the internet. So that's if you wanna see what I'm up to, that's the best place.
And I like your channel, so I would tell people go watch it because
thank you.
I'm at a point in my life where I like watching things where people enjoy stuff and don't just hate it. There are some who can, again, RLM manages that middle ground, but it is nice to just hear people talk about stuff that I remember watching with a warmth to it and a positivity to it. So I like that because I can be a miserable person a lot of times. And it's nice to escape that because that's life. And we don't need more of that in our entertainment because then it's not really entertainment. Then it's just quantified misery.
Yeah. Well, so. I'll say this too because I think, there's so many people, Angry Video Game Nerd is one of those channels where it was built on hating on this stuff, but it was really more built on laughing at the idiot that gets so worked up about this stuff. And that seems to have been lost over the years where this thing gets insanely popular. And then it's the haters grab onto it because they love that he's hating on a thing and they don't get the joke that it's absurd to get so worked up about hating this thing, and that's the joke. And I think that nuance is what has blurred and disappeared and sort of destroyed these online spaces because nobody knows how to have fun being. They don't get that it's a performance and that's the fun of it. It's not just that you hate this thing. No, the overreaction is the joke. It is the absurdity, like you said, how far over the top that somebody could ever be this angry. Yeah. And now instead people genuinely do get that angry over dumb stuff. Right. Or they pretend to get that angry for views. Right. Like, well, that's still reaction video stuff. I don't like a lot of that because it is obviously engineered. Yes. And false. And it's like, okay. I'm not saying nobody gets that angry, but I don't think because there's all types of people. Somebody gets this angry over something of any type of thing. I understand that, but most people don't. And honestly, at this point, I don't care about that. I'd rather point somebody to something and say, here's what you should look for that's fun about it. Have a good time with it, And I think that's what you do too. So that's why I was kind of like, okay, this will be a good person to talk to. I agree. So again, youtube.com/HatHoleHomeVideo. Brian, thanks for coming on, man. This was a really good time. Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for having me. And remind everybody else that you can, if you missed the first part, go over to ozonenightmare.com. I know it's a stupid name, but it will bring you to the right place. And click on the podcast link there, and that will take you to an archive that you can search for and look at late nights, and you will see part 1. And yeah, that's it. So thanks for listening, everybody, whoever's listening. Go watch something that isn't a $40 million blockbuster, but might be a lot of fun. I would suggest Tubi. You can watch stuff for free. There are ads, but you don't have to sign up for anything.
Prime Video, astonishingly, has really good recommendations for lesser films. I'll recommend that. There are lots of places now. Pluto.tv, you can watch stuff for free. There are lots of avenues, and the best part about these is because they're generally free or ad-supported, there's lots of stuff that isn't Avatar or whatever series Part 40 that's out there, and you can discover things. Look for weird artwork or Italian names or Filipino names and just go with it. Just have a good time and watch things blow up. It'll make a wonderful evening for you. On that note, I'm going to shut up. Thanks for listening, everybody. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes or to browse through our back catalog. Follow at Ozone Nightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 140 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, visit our creator page at patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare. Music for Ozone Late Night is provided by Ogre. Visit ogresound.bandcamp.com to listen and purchase his fantastic selection of music.